Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon and good evening from wherever you are. How's it going? Let's start another day. That's our third day, right? In our um, summer school on Brazilian studies, uh, right from UFMG, uh, Belo Horizonte, Brazil, which we kindly call Belo or Easy, as we call it. And then today we will have Professor Tiago Novo, who is going to update us on topics on geography. And I really do hope we have a delightful session as we have had previously Tuesday and um, Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And now, Professor Tiago, welcome. And we are honored to have you here, having known your background. And I will, pass the floor to you at the moment. Thank you so much for joining us once again in this great project and now this new way of doing our summer school, right? But still trying to keep some of these essences. Thank you so much. I'll pass the floor for you.
Okay. So, can I start?
Yes, sure, Professor. Please. We have a
Oh,
full room already.
okay, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, according where you are in the globe. Welcome to one more day in Summer School on Brazilian Studies. Today, as Luciana introduced, thanks, Luciana, we're going to talk about Brazilian geography. My name is Tiago Novo. I'm a professor from the Geology department. So I'm going to talk about the geology too, not only geography, but geology too. And well, I would like to thank very much for UFMG for the invitation. I would also like to thank the master student Julia. She helped me a lot with this presentation. And well, I prepare a little index for this. I'm gonna do a brief introduction on Brazilian geography, then talk a little bit about demography, Brazilian GDP and health. And this will be the preparation for the next steps. The next steps will be shaping Brazil. I will try to make you understand a little bit how Brazilian landscapes form. And then we're gonna go from north to south. I just want to change here one thing, okay? And I know this kind of presentation could be pretty exhausting. So according to this index, I put in every slide a small icon around here in the corner. So if you're watching later on YouTube, you can just fast forward to each part that if you have any doubt or if you want to see it again. And okay, the questions could be done in the chat, and then Luciana gonna show the questions in the end of the presentation. Okay, so let's go. Well, when you think about Brazil, of course, one of the images that come in mind is this amazing beaches that we have. This one in special, this is Sancho Beach. It's already won several times as the most amazing beach of the world. This is in Fernando de Noronha Island. And we have also amazing mountains, waterfalls, large rivers like the Amazon River. And actually, the Brazilian landscape is pretty diversified. And what I want now is for you to understand how it forms, how we get to this gigantic coastline and these amazing mountains. And actually, this is pretty beautiful. This is the highest peak from Brazil in the northern part. And I'm gonna show point to point how we get there. Okay, from the beginning, Brazil is here in South America. And most of people have no idea how big Brazil actually is. Of course, this is just a joke. You can't fit Africa. Of course, you can't fit Earth or a galaxy or the Americas. But Brazil is pretty big. It's one of the biggest countries in the world in area. If you get the top five, you have Russia with 17 million square kilometers in area. Canada, almost 10, China and US, 9.5 million square kilometer. And then we get Brazil, 8.5 million square kilometers in area. It is pretty huge. This is now not a joke, this is actually true. You can fit the whole Western Europe in Brazil. Here we have France, Spain, Portugal, Germany, and so on. And you still have room. It's actually a pretty big country. And it's very diversified. It's expected as you have such a huge area. So, after this brief introduction, I'm going to talk about demography. You can see in the corner that change here from introduction to demography. Of course, you're going to learn a lot more about it in the Corinne Davis lecture in Brazilian Society, July 14. But this is just to make a general idea. Okay, the demography density of Brazil is because I'm going to use during the presentation. We have around 200 million people in an area, as I said before, 8.5 million square kilometers. This is about 23 to 24 inhabitants per square kilometer. But it's extremely heterogeneous. If you get to the north, we have around 4 inhabitants per square kilometer. In the center west, 8 to 9. The northeast, 35. The south, 47, 48. In the southeast, almost 86. And when you go to big cities like Belo, the town that hosts UFMG, we have 2 million people in around 300 square kilometers. It is a density of 7,000 people per square kilometer. So you can see that the distribution is not equal. About Brazilian race, it's not distributed equally to around Brazil. Of course, this is going to be a great presentation from Cristiano in July 18, is just to get a general idea. Brazil is a multiracial country. We have black people, we have white people, we have brown people, and actually it's not equally distributed. If you check in the south, we have much more white people, and in the north and northeast, we have brown and black. And well, Minas Gerais is this province here, this state, and well, it's a pretty multiracial state. We like embrace everyone here, and more than that in July 18. Again, it's just to have a general idea because I'm gonna use this forward in the presentation. Very quickly, when you show a map, of course, we have to talk about the coronavirus, the COVID-19. This is a huge problem in Brazil. This is the statistics from yesterday. Brazil has more than 1.7 million cases of coronavirus with almost 70,000 deaths. And we have a lot of underreporting. So, well, you are all seeing the news, you know that we have enough time now, but it's gonna pass. Let's look to the bright side. UFMG is already testing a vaccine in the final states. We hope that it comes as soon as possible. And from Brazilian GDP, again, you're gonna heard much more about it in July 13 with Patricia Nasser, but I just wanna highlight this. Brazilian GDP depends a lot on oil, iron ore, gold, soil, and cattle raising. I'm going to talk about all of these during the presentation now, and actually going to start now because the mineral resources, they controlled Brazilian occupation. If you check, this is Brazil map, and the lights are the biggest cities. The largest towns, when you go countryside, most of them are in Minas Gerais, and this is coming from colonial times, during the gold exploration, during the 17th century. And of course, the coastline, during the coastline, we have a lot of habitation because, well, that's where the colonization begins with a lot of sugarcane. And then it starts to go countryside, mainly guided by the Golden Run. Now let's shape Brazil. As we have this introduction, let's start to shape Brazil. What shaped Brazil landscapes? Which forces are responsible for the landscape that we have nowadays? So first of all, we need to understand what is a landscape. I like very much this definition. When we look at a landscape, we see not only the present moment expressed, but an accumulation of different time. Not only the geological time, but also historical time. The geological time, when you see mountains, when you see the beaches, when you see the waterfalls, you see the geological time. You are talking about a scale of million years to shape this. But you also see the historical time, the colonial cities, the modern architecture, and so on. So the social construction that humanity has made reflects the interests which are accumulated in the landscape, revealing the diverse timing process. So it's very nice because you can see that the Brazilian occupation is extremely unequal. The north has almost anyone, and in the south we have big cities. And it was guided once in a time by the gold, by the iron, and we still depends on these products. So this is some examples. This is Salvador in Bahia, right north in Minas Gerais. This is the Paulista Avenue. We have modern cities, colonial cities. This is Ouro Preto, pretty close to Belo. It's an amazing city, and it was one of the biggest gold deposits from colonial times. And of course, Rio de Janeiro. So now I want you to understand not only how the cities were built, but mainly how the mountains were formed, how these landscapes form. So what really shaped Brazilian relief? What tectonic forces are responsible for this edification? So we need just a parenthesis here because I have to talk just a little bit about geological time scale, because we are not talking now about hundreds of years or thousands of years. We are talking now about millions and billions. So this is a nice image. This is an image from Carl Sagan. He said the cosmic calendar, and he explained the geological time very well, and I think in an amazing way. He just said, okay, if each month of the year is 1 billion year, we can explain the whole universe in 1 year. That means January, 1 billion years, February, 2 billion years, 3 billion years, until we get now, the universe is around 13 billion years old. The Earth, as we know, is around 4 to 4.5 billion years old. And in this calendar, just to have a notion how small we are, a human life is the time of a blink of an eye, is around 0.8 seconds. So just to understand how far we're gonna go now in time, we gotta understand the process in a geological time scale to understand how mountains, how waterfalls, how the beaches from Brazil form. So what forces are responsible? Let's start with a brief geological resume extract. So the Earth, as we know, it's the result of several geological events around 4 to 5 billion years of its existence. In Brazil, we have two major tectonic events. The first of them, it's about 600 million years. And I'm gonna show that this event of 600 million years ago is still printing the landscape in Brazil. So during this event, about 600 million years ago, several continental nuclei collide, closing small oceans. So this, when it forms a big continent, it called Pangaea or Gondwana. And the other one was the opening of the Atlantic Ocean. I'm gonna show some videos and some images I think gonna be much clearer now. So this is Earth as we know today. Let's go back in time just a little bit. I'm gonna start to go. Here is a clock. It's actual time. Now we are 10 million years ago. You can see that I am closing the Atlantic Ocean. So if we go fast forward here to around 60, the Atlantic Ocean is almost closed until when I go to 120, the Atlantic starts to close. So if we go 110, 20, 140 million years ago back in time, we will not have the Brazilian coast because Brazilian and Africa were glued together, also North America. So what I'm gonna show now is how we get to this, before it became this, how all this landmass stuck together. So just a heads up, here is a Brazilian map, and I'm gonna show around this area right here. I'm gonna show how the small nucleus starts to collide together to form a large land mass that corresponds to Brazil, to South America, to North America, to Africa, when they were all together. So, around 900 million years ago, we have just a small continent. And a lot of landmass starts to collide in this continent. And it forms what we call Gondwana, that after became Pangaea. And this, the imprint of Brazilian territory, this is very important. So if you check, this is a video just to check, this is India and this is Asia. This is around 6 million years ago. And that's the formation of the Himalayas. I just put this for you to have an idea what happened in Brazil 600 million years ago. All around Brazil, we have the formation of mountain ranges like the Himalaya. So if you check Brazil 600 million years ago, here is Brazil, and all these dashed lines, these were mountain ranges like the Himalaya. So in 600 million years, we start to have the weathering and erosion. And even so, nowadays, we can still see these mountain ranges just in the same direction that they were formed about 600 million years ago. And it's very beautiful because you can see it all across the country. The mountains have a direction, very clear print. And actually you can see here in Belo. And it's amazing. Brazil has these mountain ranges. I love this. And then it starts the Gondwana breakup. The Gondwana breakup is when the Atlantic Ocean opening. And well, Africa goes to one side, America goes to another, they break up. And this breakup starts in the south and go to the north. This is quite important because during this breakup, you start to accumulate salt here. And behind this salt, we have a lot of organic matter. And well, this became oil with the pass of time. And now we have huge oil deposits around Brazilian coast. I'm going to talk about this in a little bit. And when the Atlantic opening, we have the formation of the Brazilian coastline. Brazilian coastline is 7,367 kilometers long. So we have a lot of beaches. You can choose each one that you like the most. And during this opening shape amazing lowlands like the Amazonian lowlands and beautiful canyons. If you have this gray color, this grayish color, these are all lowlands. And the other colors here are the mountains that used to be mountain belts around 600 million years ago, but now it's mountains with around 1,000 meters high. So this picture here, this canyon is around here. This picture here is in the Amazon River forest. And the Amazon, well, I'm gonna talk more about it in a little bit. It's pretty amazing. It's the largest river of the world. And it actually shaped the only Brazilian desert. It's Jalapão in the center in Brazil, and it formed around 100 million years ago. Of course, it's not a big desert. If you check, the desert is here, and if you walk like 10 kilometers, you can go to forest from one side and forest from the other side. Brazil is still in a tropical weather. Okay, so during the Atlantic opening, we have these lowlands, and we also still can see these large mountains from 6 million years ago, 600 million years ago. And Brazil is in the middle of the South American plate. So we are actually in a stable place. The South American plate, it's a tectonic plate. The world is divided in around 15 big tectonic plates, and Brazil, luckily, is in the middle of one. That means that we have almost no earthquakes and almost no volcanoes. So why it's true? Because, well, if you check, here is the end of a tectonic plate, and we have Chile here. In Chile, we have lots and lots and lots of earthquake. The same thing occurs in the west coast of the US. A lot of earthquakes in the San Andreas Fault. Also Japan, a lot of earthquakes. But we still have earthquakes. We have almost none, but we still have some earthquakes. So why? Because we have no tectonic forces driving it. The earthquake mainly is two tectonic plates interacting. And when they interact, this force just propagate in energy. And this is the earthquake. So why Brazil, besides being in the middle of the South American plate, why we still have earthquakes? This is the earthquakes in Brazil. They are all pretty small. If you check, like in Chile, that in 1 year have more earthquakes than Brazil in the whole history. But what happens here? If you check, here are exactly where the mountains were built 600 million years ago. And well, these earthquakes are pretty low, but they can still broke roofs and roof tiles. And I think this is the biggest damage that a Brazilian earthquake ever made. But it happens because we have some rocks discontinuities. You can check, here we have one, and here we have another, and here we have another. And these rocks, they are actually not in their place yet. They are still just adjusting their strata. And every time they do an adjustment, we have an earthquake, a really small one, but it can cause some damage. And about the volcano, well, the rocks from Brazil are pretty old, as I told before, 600 million years ago. And the closest that we have to a volcano is the Trindade Island. Is the Brazil youngest rock. It's a baby with 250,000 years old. It's pretty young if you check that most of Brazil is 600 million old. And they call the Trindade the unreachable paradise. Well, actually, if you go there in Trindade, the only thing that you have here is an army, a small portion of an army base, and for researchers. I really want to go there one day. They say it's pretty beautiful. So let's start to shape Brazil, to understand Brazil now that we have this full introduction. Let's start to shape Brazil from north to south. I will start with the north. Here is the green. Then I will go to the central, then to northeast, then to southeast, then to south. First of all, the climate in Brazil and the vegetation. Climate in Brazil is almost tropical with the equatorial here. And here in the south, we even have snow, believe it, in Brazil. We are in winter in Brazil now, and I think it's around 26 degrees Celsius. And the vegetation, of course, we have the tropical rainforest. We call this cerrado. I will call about it is like a savanna. And here we have the caatinga. And then, of course, we have the tropical forest around here. Let's start with the north. Just to have an idea, the north, it hosts the Amazon forest. It's around 3,080,000 kilometers. Oh, it's 45% of Brazil territory. It's almost 4 million square kilometers. It's pretty huge. And it hosts the Amazon lowland. And also the Guianas Plateau. If you check here in the satellite image, you can see this. This is the highest peak in Brazil. It's 3,000 and some meters high. So this is the tropical, this is the equatorial weather, the equatorial climate. So it's always pretty hot and wet. It's always raining. And it hosts the biggest river of the world. Of course, you all know the Amazon River, but actually, I'm not talking about the Amazon River. The biggest river of the world is another one. If you check, the Amazon rainforest is around 40% of South America territory. It's not only Brazil, it's always in Colombia, Venezuela, and so on. And well, if you check, it has all around 400 billion trees and produce 20% of the oxygen of the earth. So it produces so much water and so many rain that, well, it disturbs the gravity of this area. And if you check, okay, if you go to Google Earth, oh, I want to check Amazon, it's going to be beautiful like this. But it's pretty hard to get a satellite image like this because most of the time we have clouds here. And why do we have so many clouds there? Why this is so wet? Actually, we have 400 billion geysers there. And of course, it's not an actual geyser like this, are 400 billion trees. And well, trees consume CO2 and release water. So they suck water from the soil and release in the atmosphere. And well, it's a lot of water. If you check, it's like 1,000 liters of water per day each tree. That means 20 million tons of water or 20 trillion liters of water each day. It's enough to fill 8 million Olympic pools each day. This is the largest river of the world. This is the Amazon floating river. Every day, 20 million tons of water, 20 trillion liters of water each day. Unfortunately, in the last decades, the Amazon rainforest loses around 700,000 square kilometers, most of them for cattle raising. And the cattle raising is still one of the biggest economic activities in Brazil. It's a shame, but well, it happens. About the geology in the north, this is pretty interesting because in the late 60s, this guy, Breno Santos, discovered the biggest iron deposit of the world. It calls the Carajá Metallogenetic Province, and it's pretty huge. And it starts in the 80s, but nowadays it's large, it's bigger than ever. Brazil is one of the biggest exports of iron ore. And actually, during the 80s, we have gold fever there. And well, this is what we call the naked mountain. It's Serra Pelada in Portuguese. And this is an actual picture from the 80s. During the 80s, everyone starts to go to Serra Pelada and try to dig some gold because there are a lot of gold there. They still extracting gold, but well, it was very hard because if you find gold at that time, it's really hard for you to get out of here with this gold. Of course, this kind of stuff don't happen anymore, but they still extracting gold, but now with a legal firm. Going a little down, now we live in the north and we go to the central portion of Brazil. This is the capital of Brazil. This little square here, this is the capital of Brazil, and it was founded in 21 April of the 60s. It's pretty young. And we have this lowland, this amazing lowland, and the largest soy plantation. You remember that I talked before that the soy is a big part of the Brazilian GDP. Well, the soy plantation in Brazil is around 34 million hectares. Just to have an idea, this is the size of Germany. Yes, we have one Germany in area just for soy. And actually, this is not a good news because the soy actually, it ruins the soil because you need a lot of water. So actually what we are selling is not soy. We are selling our area and our water. And China is our biggest buyer actually. So going to the Northeast. The Northeast is the beginning of the European colonization during the 15th century. And well, it's a lot of poverty because in the north, we have a really wet climate. When you go here, it's extremely dry. And well, if you check, this is from human development. You have a small fraction here in the Northeast for rich people, and it just starts to get each more poverty and each more drier when you go countryside. So that's a big problem in Brazil. I know you're gonna hear a lot more about it in society, in Brazilian society, but there is a large migration flux here, mainly during the 80s, still nowadays. And on the other hand, if you go to the coastline, you have amazing beaches with pretty expensive hotels. You know, some hotels, this is from Fernando de Noronha, well, you can pay around $1,000 in a day. From the geology, we have gemstones, ornamental rocks. This is the Paraíba tourmaline. This is one of the most expensive gemstones in the world. And we have a lot, unfortunately, a lot of illegal buyers for this here. And we came to the Southeast. The Southeast is the most developed part of Brazil. It's 55% of the GDP and 44% of Brazilian population. Well, it encompasses Minas Gerais. We are around here in Belo Horizonte, São Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, and Espírito Santo. We have a large littoral lowland, and When you go across the lowland, you go to the Mar mountain range. That's what you call Serra do Mar. It's extremely beautiful. It's like 8 hours drive from Belo Horizonte. We are countryside actually. And when you pass the Serra do Mar lowland, you go to Serra da Mantiqueira. It's wonderful, 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 wonderful place. And actually, here, this is a picture of Minas Gerais. This is called the Caparaó, or the Bandeira Peak, or the Flag Peak. And this is the third highest peak from Brazil. And actually, it snowed one time here. And we take a lot of pictures, of course. And we get here. This is Belo. This is Belo Horizonte. Here is the Mineirão Stadium. It got pretty famous after the German get 7-1 in Brazil. And UFMG is right here, right across the Mineirão. And this is the Pampulha Lake. Amazing landscape here in Belo. And if you check these mountain ranges, this is the south of the city. This is iron ore. And well, I'm gonna show some pictures. This mountain range continues. And well, let's start to talk about the mineral resources from the southeast, the most developed part of Brazil. It was the first time that a mineral resources guide Brazilian occupation. You must remember, I talked in the beginning of the presentation. So I talked that, and this is the first gold mines from Brazil. This is during the 17th century. You're gonna learn more about that in the Brazilian history. And still from nowadays, we still dig in a lot of gold. There is a say that Minas Gerais has a heart of gold and a chest of iron, because we have lots and lots of iron deposits. And in the middle of these deposits, we have gold deposits. So the iron industry, the ore industry is a huge part of Brazilian GDP. And that's the mountain range that I show. This is an iron mining, and this is Belo. We are okay here, just to be clear. And well, that's a tough part, because when you have a lot of iron ore, you have this tailings dam. And in the last 6 years, for 2 times, some catastrophes happened. The dam just break, it erupt. And it was pretty hard, not only for environmental issues, but a lot of people died too. So this is a hard video to see, but it happens like 2 years ago in Brazil. And like 2 years ago, 50 kilometers away from Belo Horizonte. So the first one in 2015 was this Samarco mining in Mariana district. And when the dam collapsed, it just destroyed one river that leaves Minas Gerais and go until the ocean, and also destroy one village. Luckily, all the village was informed before, and I think there is almost no one died in this one. The second one last year in January 2019, we didn't have that luck. It destroyed during the work time, and all the people that were working here, they just disappeared. This was pretty tough times. It's pretty hard even to watch, but it's something you need to know, because Brazilian depends, the GDP depends on the iron ore, and the iron mines, unfortunately, didn't take seriously the construction of the dams. These are some pictures of the rescue. And well, moving apart, this is pretty tough, sorry. Moving away, besides the gold and the iron, in the southeast, we still have lots and lots of gemstones. There are some mineralogical museums in Belo, in Ouro Preto, and even in Europe. There is a pretty museum, a pretty mineralogical museum in Freiberg, in Germany. And in this museum, there is a whole floor just dedicated to the gemstones from the southeast Brazil. There are a lot here. And also the ornamental rocks. Well, if you check, we live a lot just just exporting soil, iron, gold, cattle raising, ornamental rocks, and gemstones. It's a big part of Brazilian GDP. And the other part is the oil. As I told before, when the Atlantic opened, we start to form a lot of oil deposits here. The deposits are mainly around here. If you can check, this is the coastline of Brazil. And in this light blue, we have what we call the platform. And right here in the end of the light blue, we have this slope. And in this slope, the slope zone hosts most of the Brazilians' oil deposits. Here is just a section that you can see. Here is deep sea, 2,000 meters. 3,000 meters, we have the first oil deposits. Then we have a 2,000 meters salt layer. The salt layer is pretty important because it keeps the oil there. It doesn't allow the oil to escape to anywhere. And then here in the bottom, we have the pre-salt. The pre-salt is gigantic. These are the biggest deposits from Brazil. The Iracema, Lula, Roncador, Marlim Sul, and Marlim. These are pre-salt deposits. They are extremely large ones. Just to take an idea, before the pre-salt, Brazil make 41,000 barrels a day. Now it's 500,000 barrels a day after the pre-salt discovery. But it's pretty hard to extract this salt because if you check, it's around 9 to 10 kilometers down the ocean. So we are almost ending this to start the discussions, and we get to the south of Brazil here. Well, the weather here changes. Every year it snows. The name of the town is São Joaquim around here. And every year we got a reporter just going there and say, okay, it starts snowing in São Joaquim again. It's like a tradition here in Brazil. Well, the south is pretty small. If you check Minas Gerais, it's bigger than the whole southern area. And well, it's pretty interesting about the geology because almost all the rocks in the south, in this region, I'm gonna do a zoom here in this region, almost all of these rocks were deposited during the Atlantic opening. And it's pretty nice because we can do a lot of comparative geology and try to make some links between the geology from South America and Africa and India and Antarctica and Australia. It's pretty nice. Okay, and finally the landscapes. This is the Meridional Plateau. We have a lot of canyons, beautiful canyons, and also these amazing waterfalls that is right in the bottom of Brazil when you know the boundary with Argentina. It's pretty beautiful. One day I'm gonna go there. So this is a little bit of the Brazilian geography. I will be more than happy to answer to any questions that you have. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks for the patience. And well, Luciana, I think it's time we can start the chat.
Yes,
Questions?
we already have questions.
Okay.
So we have Isadora, she's from Brazil. And there is this. We were brought up and thinking that we were the mountain state, but as Isadora mentioned, I was taught that in Brazil we don't have mountains, since mountains are originated by modern folks. So we have hills and not mountains. Is this classification valid, or is it just a high school thing?
Luciana, I'm sorry, because the audio is not very good.
Okay.
Maybe if you put...
See if it's... Is it better now?
Yeah,
is it
better? It's better now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Isadora mentions about this high school myth, and she wants to know if it's true. She says, Professor, I'm not from geography or geology or geography area, but I was taught that in Brazil we don't have mountains, since mountains are originated by modern folks. So we have hills and not mountains. Is this classification valid, or is it just a high school thing?
Yeah, we have two things in this question. The definition of mountain is the biggest one. The definition of mountain, it's not a consensus. If you get some people just say that mountains only can call mountains if you have an active fault just driving them up. That means we can say the Himalayas are nowadays moving up, so they are mountains. But here in Brazil, it's pretty stable, so we can call hills and not mountains. On the other hand, when you go to some geomorphology studies, they say, okay, if we have more than 300 meters from the bottom to the top, I can call a mountain. So it's under discussion, but well, to avoid getting any trouble, you can say they are hills.
Okay.
Then you go, okay, everyone is happy.
We won't get into trouble, although mountains are nice. And then there's Arena. I think she's from Russia. And she says she was wondering about Bolsonaro's policy aimed at the deforestation in favor of farmers and miners. Is it true?
Well, this is pretty hard in Brazil nowadays. The Amazon rainforest never been damaged so quickly. Here in 2019, actually, it was a record. And well, the politics here actually is helping, but it's not the first time. In 2005, we have a similar thing happening, but from 2005 to 2016, we improve a lot in the fiscalization of this area. And in the last 2 years, unfortunately, this fiscalization is being ruining. Is just breaking, is closing. Now the government is closing some parts that do this fiscalization, and unfortunately, this is true. This is not a government for the environmental, and the Amazon rainforest never been destroyed so quickly like nowadays.
That's sad, right? And then we have Maria Hateva, and she asks, what are the most pronounced impacts of climate change on the climate and landscape in Brazil?
Okay, so, well, Brazil, we still have tropical weather, mainly tropical to equatorial weather. So we don't have a lot of impact of the global warming yet. But, well, this year, something already happened. We have a cyclone here. It's not usual.
Mm-hmm.
But the impact in the weather, this is interesting because usually Brazil, in the northeast, southeast, and south, we have a lot of rain during January, at least from September to March, we have a lot of rain. So the end of the year is rainy, and we have a dry season that is like June, July, August. And nowadays it's okay, but like 5 years ago, it all changed. During January, we didn't have any rain. And it's the start of the global warming, because the first thing, places that have an equatorial climate starts to go to a desert climate. And so the rain became to be more scarce. And we are start to dealing with it, because a few years ago we have to a huge dry season, because for 2 years we have really low rain rates. So our water deposits, they weren't full enough. And that's one part. But you can see this in the landscape pretty well, because the landscape, it it takes more than just one human life. It takes more than the biological time just to change, mainly here. So the first thing is that we have fewer rain seasons. And well, actually, this is the big problem of global warming. A lot of people deny it, but actually, science already proved that it's true. We know that during geological time, we have dry seasons, we have rain seasons. This during geological time, during millions of years, it can change, but it never changes that quickly. We are accelerating the global warming very quickly. And the problem is that you can't deny it, because it will not happen tomorrow. It will not happen in a year, but it will be catastrophic in 20 years, in 30 years. So that is the big deal. And that's the hard part to prove, because people want, okay, where is the global warming? It's cold now, isn't it? So it's hard to explain, but well, in Brazil, we don't have a lot of impact yet. But if you check our neighbors in Chile, well, there are some glaciers that no longer exist. It means that Chile is already warming up. When Chile warm up, it means that the rain gonna change here, because the whole climate gonna change. And we don't know what's gonna happen, because you have a lot of floods in São Paulo. We start to have some floods here in Belo this year, and last year we have pretty huge floods in the urban area that never happened before. So it's changing in a little bit, but it's not like when you go to the North Pole. The North Pole in 20 years will not exist anymore, because it's only ice. Here in Brazil, we still with the rainforest, I hope, but it's not that impact. And that's why it's so hard for us to explain the catastrophic thing about global warming in Brazil, because it doesn't appear in the landscape very well.
It does have to do a lot with Rihanna's question when she asked specifically about the 2019 Amazon fires, and to what extent does it affect geography, topography, and fauna? Because you were saying it's not an immediate impact, but what can we expect from this
Yeah,
being?
because we have two things to look at. If you look for the scientific point of view, the scientific point of view, this is catastrophic, because we already eliminate some species that we don't even know that exist. So maybe the cure of COVID could be there, the cure of malaria could be there, and we don't know, because we put fire, we destroy, and we just don't know. We didn't have the chance to study. And the other thing is how society in general see it. Society in general just see, okay, we need more money. We need more area for cattle raising. We need more area for soil plantation. We need to make money. And these are just trees. And it's pretty hard to understand, for example, that the biggest river of the world is a floating river. It's not the Amazon River. And the floating river is getting smaller each day because we are destroying the Amazon rainforest. So this is pretty hard for society in general to understand, and mainly nowadays that we are passing to sometimes that people are skeptical about science. I really don't understand what is going on. But well, it's hard. From in one hand, the scientific issues, if you look in a scientific point of view, it is catastrophic and it's have no way back. You know, we already destroy it. We have no way back in this, because if some fungus, if some bacteria is already gone extinct, it's gone. You will not generate another one. And on the other hand, people just say, okay, you destroy, you can just plant some trees again. But it's not how it works, actually.
Not how it works, right, Professor? And then we have another question about the catastrophes of the dams. And if you think our geotechnical engineers capable of avoiding these kinds of catastrophes, or is the biggest problem the businessmen who don't care so much about the findings made by the engineers? And she feels that these catastrophes could have been avoided in many ways, but there's this capitalism and
this is true. This is true. I'm 100% on board. Let me just put in one image here. Oh, sorry, take a little long.
Why you find it
okay.
Here. Saying your presentation was so nice and they found it was so great. So just so you know.
And well, this is one typical tailing dam. So first of all, does we need this to extract iron ore? No, there are other ways. But this is the cheapest one. And of course, big companies can economy in the house of billions dollars when they do the iron ore like this and in other ways. But on the other hand, if you check how society see these companies, if you go in Brazil and start to ask, so what do you think about the iron companies? Everyone hates them, but we need them for the jobs. We need them for the Brazilian GDP. It's pretty hard. So, for example, in Mariana, it was in here, 2015. This is the biggest environmental catastrophe from modern times in Brazil. It destroyed a river. It destroyed lots and lots of fish. It destroyed villages that depends on the river. And on the other hand, the Mariana, the city mayor, goes to the Samarco and asks to open the mine again because they need the jobs and they need the money. So it's extremely hard because I'm 100%. I agree 100% with the question. It's a catastrophe. It's mainly about how we see capitalism and how we see the iron exploration. There are smart ways to do this. And actually nowadays, due to these catastrophes, they start to change how they dig the iron. Now they are changing. But the big problem is while they are changing, we have around 100 dams just in Minas Gerais. So if they all collapse, we have Itabira, Ouro Preto, Congonhas, Lafayette, Jeceaba. We have dozens of cities that gonna just disappear. And they still live in fear because in one hand, they need the job, they need the money to survive. On the other hand, it's a catastrophe. But nowadays, the big companies, they are trying to avoid this kind of construction. And well, they are just interrupting this kind and it starts to extract all this mud from here. But well, it will take around 30 years to take it all off. It's a long time because the iron ore is a big part. It's mainly in Minas Gerais. And when you check on Google Earth, you can see the iron mining and you can see this dam, these tailing dams. They are pretty huge. They are much bigger than the iron mine. And you can see that all of them are going to the countryside. None of them are going to Belo. Because what happens when you will construct this, they are just, the company is just available to construct these tailing dams if there is no city below it. So what happened? They allow if it is a small city. They doesn't allow to construct if the collapse then go to Belo, but they allow if go to small village. And well, this is actually almost equal killing because you can't allow this. You know, in the Mariana, the San Marco incident, the village that was destroyed already exists. So they could not build the dam where they built that. And well, unfortunately, hundreds of people had to die, and
They
we
shouldn't
had,
allow. They shouldn't allow it anywhere. I mean, not
yeah,
just because it's a small city or a small village. I
yeah,
mean,
it shouldn't be allowed. I agree, but the problem goes to if you don't allow, the companies say, okay, if you don't allow it, I'm gonna do the iron ore in the north of Brazil.
somewhere
Unfortunately,
else, right?
in the
Where
north,
they
we have a lot of iron, and they are digging the iron in this kind, only in this kind. Nowadays, in Minas Gerais, they are not using it anymore, and they are trying to make this an activity. So they are just sucking the mud out of it. But as I said before, going to take a really long time to take all the mud. Unfortunately, we are trapped there. We are, in one hand, we need the money. In the other hand, uh, there are a lot of options. You can dig the iron ore in a responsible way. And this is what starts to happen here in Minas Gerais. But, well, we need to have two catastrophes to start to do that. We are just starting to do this here. Well, I hope we have a brighter future. But
Professor, they're changing the way they, I mean,
yeah,
they
they
keep
are
this
changing the
kind of
way
money.
because they
But
start.
then again, we already have plenty of structures like these
Yeah,
all around Minas Gerais, which is our state.
yeah,
I mean, are they doing something about it?
yeah, yeah. This is the point. They are getting this, and they are sucking all the mud, and they are doing this mud in a dry way. They are storing the mud in a dry way. So they just get all the water out and starts to store some big blocks. And
But
it
they were
sorry.
aware that this was not something safe beforehand, weren't
Yeah,
they?
what is the point? Because these are a classic.
Because I mean, I'm not an engineer, but I can see this. I'm like, I look at this, and I myself, I mean, I'm a linguist, and I can see this. My God, this doesn't
Yeah.
look good. This, you know, this is
There
like,
are some types, some kinds of dams, you know, and this is just one of them. I'm not expert in this. I did some study in
but you
one.
see, it looks bad, right?
Sure, of course. Yeah, but what happened? This is actually pretty critical because, as I said before, if all the dams start to collapse, we have several cities. You know, in one hand, we are saying, okay, the big city that is Belo will not be affected, but we have people that has 100,000 people living that gonna be affected. So it's a pretty catastrophic thing. I'm 100% on board of this, but we have to know now what we're gonna do. So okay, we still need the iron ore for the jobs. We still need the iron ore for the money. So what we gonna do next? How are we going to prevent this to happen? So it's it's more expensive. Of course it's more expensive, but you can do the iron ore. You can dig this from earth and transform this in pure iron to sell in a dry way, in a dry, using no water. And that's what they are using now. And during the night they are going to the machines that just suck the mud and it starts to make like something for constructions, you know, because here you have a dry mud, you can construct something with this, but this is the problem. It's gonna take, I don't know if I'm gonna see it in my lifetime.
Wow, impressive. Okay, so changing a little bit, we have questions concerning gemstones and gold, right? So there's Aaron from Russia, and he asks, what are the main gemstones that are mined in Brazil? And also they're asking about the gold, and I mean, this? Who owns the gold extraction that might
Okay,
be?
so the first question about the gemstone, this is the most expensive from Brazil. This called the Paraíba tourmaline, is extremely beautiful. But if you check in the Brazilian setting, let me put in a, just to get a Brazilian map, you are also in the Brazilian map here. Around here in Minas Gerais, we have what you call the Oriental Pegmatitic Province. And this is one of the richest gemstones provinces from the world. Actually, this is a huge problem because these are mainly illegal. When you go countryside in Minas Gerais, I'm talking about Minas Gerais in the southeast, the most developed portion of Brazil. When you go to the north of Minas Gerais, you can still see some illegal digging. And well, I went one time just to see how it works. You enter in a hole that just fits your body, and you go there, and you go under the ground around 100 meters. You have no safety. It can just collapse anytime. And people are extracting with little hammers these gemstones, and then they sell mainly to the black market. There is, yeah, this is, yeah, that's sad, but it's true. You don't have a high fiscalization from this, and you don't have big companies just digging for these kind of gemstones. It's pretty rare actually, because it's hard to find, And well, you can take a big land and find anyone, even if you are searching in the right place. They are very heterogeneous distributed, and that's a hard thing. After they are sold to the black market, and then big expositors, big mine mineral expositors buy it, and then you can do some tax when they sell it. But the first one that goes from the small guy that lives in the illegal place and take himself to the black market for, well, there is one in Minas Gerais that these are I just met. This is the guy that drove me to see how he extract the gemstone. He said that the most priced one that he sell was around $10,000. It's pretty big, but if you check, some people there already sell something for more than $1 million. Yeah, it's a lot of money, but it's pretty rare to find. And well, this $1,000, this $10,000 gemstone will probably be evaluation around $100,000 in the real market, not in the black market, because then they start to do all the legal stuff to pay all the taxes. But they already buy it much cheaper from the small guy and just go and go and go. I'm sorry, I forgot the other part of the question is about the,
It was about the gold. I
yeah,
mean, who owns the
yeah.
rights to extract the gold?
Nowadays, well, if you check in Brazil during colonial times, the gold just being extracted and go straight to Portugal and so on. The Brazilian gold was such a huge deal during the 17th century that it even changed the European economy. It was a lot of gold going there. Well, this is the main gold. This gold during the colonial times was the gold that was found on the rivers. Nowadays, the gold is mainly in subterranean mines, and it's only big companies. In one hand, these big companies, they pay a lot of taxes. They have, there are a lot of employees. And the good thing about gold, they don't need to construct large dams because, you know, just to have an idea, to build all of this, if you have 10 grams of gold in a ton of rock, you already pay everything. You already pay your employees, you already pay your machinery, and so it's pretty good. There are some places in Brazil, in the medium term is like around 30 to 50 milligrams from gold per ton. But there is one place in central Brazil, actually central to north, it's near Carajás, that they already extract 500 grams per ton. So it's a lot of iron, a lot of gold, sorry. And nowadays it's mainly in big companies, but they are doing actually, the gold companies are doing actually a great job. They are respecting the environment. You almost can't see the gold mine because they are subterraneous. You only see one hole, and they don't need to build the dams. So it's a good thing for the environmental, and there are a lot of jobs. Just to have an image, this is actually not from the naked hill, it's actually from Mato Grosso. Just to be clear, this is a cup. This is
But
the
is it?
classic cup to drink beer in Brazil, just to have a notion
But
of,
is this like a rock of gold? Is that what it is?
yeah, it's
Wow,
pretty huge, it's impressive.
it's impressive. Where
Yeah.
is it again?
This is in, let me put in a map. again, here, sorry. Okay, so this is the central portion of Brazil.
Uh-huh.
We have Mato Grosso state, it's around here. It's in the north of Mato Grosso, almost in the north. And if you check the biggest iron mines and the Serra Pelada, the human anthill, it was around here. So it could be the same lineament, could be even the same geological features,
Yeah.
but it's not exactly the same, just to be clear, but could be related.
Excellent. Wow. Okay, so we have many questions, and let's try to move on. And then they're changing the subject. There's Kerry from Belfast, and he's asking. He thanks you for the amazing presentation, and he asks if Brazil, compared to other Latin American countries in terms of diversified and landscapes and geology, is it the most diverse in Latin America,
South
South
America.
America?
Well, if you check South America, we have a lot of countries. Brazil is the most diversified because it's the biggest one. But if you go to Colombia, around here, so Colombia is pretty diversified too, because it has amazing islands. It has the Andes in one portion and have a part of the Amazonian rainforest. But of course, Brazil is like 6 times bigger than Colombia. So we are a huge country. It's pretty big. So we are the most diversity country in landscape, geological speaking. And that's why we have so many deposits. And of course, one thing, when you go, for example, when you go to Chile, the Chile is mainly on the Andes Cordillera. The Andes Cordillera, I will put in the, sorry, I will put in the last image that you can see the South America relief. So this is the Andean Cordillera. You can see there are a lot of mountains. These mountains are hills too. It's better. You can see we have some hills here in Brazil. They are not that high. But if you check for Chile, it's mainly the hills. If you go here to Argentina, you have hills here and you have a desert here. And the desert from Argentina actually goes to Jalapão in Brazil. It's not a continuity, but well, you have a desert here, you have Jalapão around here. But they don't have this diversity of Brazil. Because Brazil, you have a rainforest here, you have hills here, you have the Caatinga around here, you have a, a different kind of weather in the south that you get snow and so on. So it's extremely diversity, but mainly because it's extremely big. Because, well, if you check, okay, South America, the rainforest from Amazon, the Amazon rainforest is 40% of the South America, and it's mostly in Brazil. So Brazil, it's a big portion of South America. That's why it's so diverse. But of course, each country has these specificities.
And talking about that, Victor asks, he says, the Himalayas are between the Indian and the Eurasian plates. How did Brazil mountains form if they're in the middle of the South American plate?
Yeah, well, this is a nice question because when you check, let me back just to this. Yeah, this. Okay, this is Brazil nowadays, of course, and if you go far, far behind, you're gonna see this. When Brazil, in Africa, in North America, in Australia, and India, they are all together in a big landmass. This is the Pangaea, the Gondwana supercontinent. And we have two main events that create the mountains. So the first thing that we have to understand that create the hills, the mountains from Brazil, the first thing we have to understand is that what is the structure that is imprint in the hills? The structure that print the hills is from 600 million years ago. This, what you call in geology, this is the Gondwana amalgamation. Sorry. This is the Gondwana amalgamation. And Brazil is right here. This is the Amazonian area. This Belo is around here, okay, in this big sketch. And well, of course, if you check, wait, from 600 million years, that's when the mountains formed. No, actually, the mountains are pretty younger, because if you check during this time, we don't have a South America plate. We have a big landmass of continents. We only have the South America plate when the Atlantic Ocean, sorry, here, when the Atlantic Ocean starts to form. When the Atlantic Ocean starts to form, around 120, 140 million years, and here we break up, we go South America to one side, Africa to the other side, and then we start to develop what became to be the South America plate. And when you start to draw them apart, you have a lot of blocks adjustments. And these blocks adjustments, they didn't happen anywhere. They happen where you already have one discontinuity. This discontinuity, that what was printed here. 600 million years, we shaped the mountains. 100 million years ago, when the Atlantic starts to open, the Atlantic opened exactly here, where the mountain already have this discontinuity. So the blocks starts the adjustment and form really nice landscapes. Sorry, let me just put in one that is, and do these lineaments pretty clear in the image. If you go to Google Earth, you can check these lineaments, these beautiful lineaments. Well, so the mountain's signature, the mountain structure was formed around 600 million years ago, but it just got elevated during the Atlantic opening. When the Atlantic starts to open, so you start a lot of blocks just going up and down, and this what we have in the relief here in Brazil nowadays.
Excellent. That's great. Seeing it by,
in the picture. That was
I love
excellent.
this
Wow. Yeah, this is another one, right?
Yeah,
And
this is
then
from Rio de Janeiro.
the questions are so diverse, but I think it's really nice for the discussion, right? And we still
Okay.
have time, so this is so good. And then we have Kirana from Indonesia, and it says, I'm curious about the offshore oil store and the process of extracting the oil from the deep down sea. Is it by drilling? And will it somehow be dangerous if the drilling process touches the tectonic plates wrongly?
Sorry, the last part I didn't understand.
Sorry. The question is, she's asking about the offshore oil store, the process of extracting the oil.
Yeah.
And she's actually asking is it by drilling? She wants to confirm that, and if it's dangerous for the environment if it touches the tectonic plates wrongly.
Well, yeah. First, there is no problem with the tectonics because it's 11 kilometers deep, and a tectonic plate, even an oceanic tectonic plate, that it's much thinner than a continental plate. It's at least 30 kilometers. So with the tectonic, it's okay. We are just scratching the surface of the plate. Even go 11 kilometers down about tectonics and stuff like this, it's no problem. And how they can get the oil so deep. This is pretty interesting. If you go to Petrobras, Petrobras is the Brazilian federal company that, well, extracts most of the oil. And you have a lot of videos explaining how they get this. We have big ships, big platforms in the ocean, and the platform release like another smaller platform, very dense, and it goes to the bottom of the ocean here. And this just gets stuck in the bottom of the ocean and starts to drilling. And the drilling is connected here. The hardest part is not the drilling. The hardest part is to stay stable 2 kilometers in the sea. When you start to have big storms, it's pretty hard. And then when you put your platform, your deep platform here, the rest of the part is okay. The challenge is how can I get my platform here? How can I stuck it because it's 200 meters in the sea? And then you start to drilling and how you gonna take this material here. This is the hard part because in the ocean you have all the times going one side and another, one side and another. But well, it's actually by drilling, and after you do the drilling, you start to suck the oil. It's pretty. It it looks like a normal oil extraction in land, but it's much harder because you have to calculate the sea, you have to take into account the storms, and you are not seeing this because you are just with sonars, you are just get, most of the time you just get images until you get to the oil. It's pretty hard, but it's very nice when you see it working. It's very nice. You know, in Rio de Janeiro, there are a big research center from Petrobras. And when you go there, you can see because they are drilling, they just drill and take the rock and starts to study the rock. And I have the opportunity to go and see all the section until the oil. It's amazing. It's amazing. When you go to the salt layer actually already have some oil because the oil it's low density and it starts to want to go upwards just because of the change of density. The rocks are much more dense and the oil starts to go uprise, 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 and it begins the salt layer. When it finds the salt layer is impermeable and the oil just stuck this. And so when they start to drill the salt layer, they say, okay, now in around 15 meters, in around 500 meters, we're gonna find the oil. And they start to dig, take the salt layer and starts to suck the oil. It's pretty high engineering to get to, first to get the drilling here, it's extremely hard. And to get the samples from here to here is extremely hard too. But well, it's all Brazilian technology. And in the Petrobras website, you can see videos of how they do this. It's pretty nice to visit for more info.
So that's so interesting. Pictures are illustrative, but so we can go to Petrobras site and then we can see the images. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I can even get one.
Kachi, we let's try to find the site and put it in the chat, please, if you could.
Yeah, I can check the
No,
website.
Catherine, will help us out. She's gonna find
Yes,
something.
Luciana.
Excellent, thank you. Then there are so many questions, Professor. Let's see if we can
please,
address
please.
all of them. And they are so diverse because now we have Young from Hong Kong, and is asking about pollution. So we're doing all these extractions. So water pollution, is it a big problem? Is it a big problem also because of tourism thriving in the coast? And how is the pollution issue addressed in Brazil?
Okay, so first about the oil. The oil is the extract, the where the oil mines. Let's talk like this. They are here is Brazil, and the oil is around here. It's pretty far from the coast. So for tourism, it's not an issue because you almost can't see because they are really far. So you almost can't see them from the coast. From tourism, it's okay. Then we get to the pollution. The oil extraction, we didn't have a problem. We never have a problem with the extraction of oil, but we have problems in the storage of the oil. This is the big problem because they drill the oil in a spectacular way. It's pretty impressive, all the technology.
What about that past oil spread we had just
Yeah,
like some
yeah,
months ago?
this is the point. Because they extract the oil, but then start the store in big ships. And what happened is because sometimes these ships starts to drop the oil. This is the hardest part. I think 1 or 2 years ago in Brazil, we have a huge problem with oil that gets all the northeast and parts of the southeast coast too. They didn't know until today what happens, where the oil came from, but one thing they know, this is not Brazilian oil. That wasn't Brazilian oil because when you extract the oil, you know the oil was formed in some temperature, some pressure conditions with some kind of organic matter. So you can track, okay, this oil is from Brazil, this oil is from the US. But the problem is, okay, the oil is not from Brazil. They are not sure where it's from. But even if they know where it's from, you know, the US sell oil for all around the globe. And the South Africa too. And so how they gonna know? They are saying that it was a second ship that starts to drip the oil after several years. We actually don't know. We actually don't know yet. And this is hard time. But about the pollution, again, the oil is not the problem. The industries are the problem. If you go to big cities like Belo, this here is Belo, here Rio de Janeiro, here São Paulo, we have a lot of industry. We have no sanitation. If you go to here in Brazil, we have a huge discrepancy in the money distribution. So we have in the poor neighborhoods here called the favelas, you don't have sanitarization. It's pretty hard. And this is the biggest problem in pollution in Brazil. The industry that most of them just drop it in the river and whatever. If you check here in Belo, we don't have any river that we can swim in the town of Belo Horizonte. I can't just go away and go to the Pampulha Lake, that is that wonderful lake that we have pretty close to UFMG, but I can't swim there because it's polluted. And so the extraction, it's not the problem. We have much bigger problems in the issue of pollution, actually. And well, this would call a class just to environmental in Brazil, because it's a huge problem. Of course, when we have things like the rupture of the dam, this is much bigger. This go everything just stay aside, because this is much bigger. This destroy a river. This destroy the life in the river. This destroy a village. Luckily, didn't destroy all the people that live in that village because they are warned before. But you know, all the pollution, it was pretty tough. And even for water recharge, it's get harder, because you just put a lot of mud in the river, and the mud starts to salate the river. You can't just drain water anymore. So it starts to get dry. And well, this is,
This goes with the question by another student,
yeah.
which is something I can't understand it myself.
How come a country that depends so much on its natural resources is also the one that destroys them the most? I mean,
Oh, okay.
how
Yeah.
come that?
Well, we have so many options, so many options that we try to put in the mind of the big companies. But, well, it's hard because they are just asking, okay, before the dam rupture, they already know that it could happen. Of course, they know that it could happen. But they just said, okay, it never happened before. Why you are saying that it's gonna happen? That this is the same, almost the same thing of the global warming. People don't see it happens now. They just don't care. And this is an extremely big trouble, because we need oil, we need iron, we need gold, but we also need tourism. We also need the Amazon rainforest, but we are just destroying. This is, you know, this is a big problem. It's not only geology or geography. This is much more a society problem, how the society see itself. I think in the class of society, it's gonna be more clear. But you know, this skeptical in science matters. It make no sense. And that's a big deal. This is the big deal, because you show, okay, we cannot do this anymore. We can destroy the Amazon rainforest because our climate gonna collapse. So we will not be able to enjoy the beaches because we will have cyclones. We will not be able to enjoy the waterfalls because they're gonna dry. And they just said, okay, they are not drying yet. What are we gonna do? It's pretty hard to convince the people to talk to them what to do, because actually they run the money and they make the decisions. It's pretty hard, but we try to make the change, but it need everyone needs to do their part, and we need to the whole society to go together. It
Yeah, but
can't just be some people, you know, and it's a pretty hard thing to do. I don't know if we can do this in Brazil, actually.
and then, Professor, we are talking about legalized, and most of the times state, I mean, partially state companies that are working legally, and these kinds of things happen to legal extractions. And
Yeah.
then we have questions concerning, what about the illegal digging?
Oh, yeah.
What about the illegal mining? I mean, how does that impact and how does that work? Because I mean, if legal companies, legal extraction
But
does such
the
harm
illegal
to the
companies,
environment, how about the illegal ones, the
yeah,
Amazon illegal mining?
this is the point. They are illegal ones. They are so small, but so small that they don't have dams. First of all, they don't have dams because they are pretty small. They are not from iron. They are mostly from gemstones and gold.
So the illegal ones are less harmful than the legal ones. Is
Yeah,
that what you're saying?
yeah, yeah. And the biggest problem with the illegal ones is that when they start, for extract like diamonds, you need to put some mercury on the water so you can see it floating better. And this mercury in the water, mercury, sorry, I think I translated it wrong. And they just drop this chemical stuff in the water. And this is an issue. This is an issue that happens in Minas Gerais around 4 decades ago because they just drop these chemical things in the river, and the towns that are just above the river starts to drink the water, and well, you have several cases of disease, brain disease, that was caused because of that. But if you check this image, if you check this, they will never do something like that because but just because they are small, just because they are small. And well, besides they being small, they have to keep hiding stuff, so they can't just throw the chemical anymore in the river and pretend nothing gonna happen, because nowadays is the supervision is much higher than 4 decades ago. So the illegal pollution, it's mostly okay because it's a small problem. It's actually is a small problem. We have to see first what is catastrophic. What can we do to say, okay, stop, you can't do this anymore. I know after the first dam rupture in 2015, we start to do a lot of lectures about what can we do with the iron ore that don't need this. And we go to the cities to talk, okay, you live above a dam. If it collapses, you have to go out quick. And here from Minas Gerais, if you go from Belo to Rio de Janeiro, you're gonna pass at least to 30 cities that gonna be destroyed if all them collapses. And so this, I think, is the biggest problem here. So we have to first attack them. And so, okay, now this part is clear. Actually, I don't think I'm gonna see this part clear in my lifetime, but we are working for it. And after it's clear, you start, okay, so let's check the illegal ones because they are pretty small, actually. It's not they are harmless, but they are just smaller, much, much smaller.
Yeah. There's a question about, um, and I'm going to expand the question. The question from Holly is, we have so much oil. Why do we import so much? And I want to extend that question to towards these extraction industry companies. I remember once in Brazil, we were trying to invest in industrialization rather than in extraction. And then apparently, from my point of view and my feeling is, we had this this initialization with industrialization, but then again, we went back when we have these companies privatized and not investing so much on industrialization, but rather on extraction. So I thought that was like a step back from what we initially were starting to, to initiate in the country. And then, how do you see that? How,
Yeah,
so these two questions,
I
I think they
get
go
this
together.
question, and well, Brazil is still acting like a colony, if you check. You know, during the 60s, I will just put another image here. During the 60s, when Carajás was discovered, the plan here, this is one of the biggest metallogenetic provinces of the world. It's in Brazil. It was not only iron, gold, copper, manganese, and it's a lot of deposits. And when it starts to begin the extraction, there is a plan. Let's make here an industry. But it wasn't the interests of people who has the money. That's the problem. And I agree 100%. It makes no sense. Why do we sell iron and then buy iron products? It makes no sense. If we make it, we already be a much better country. We already have much more development. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. And it goes for oil too. We sell what it calls the naked oil, and people benefits the oil, and then we get it back. And it makes no sense, because if you check the Petrobras production, we have oil for Brazil and we have oil to sell. It it's no There is no question there. Of course, we have a large oil, large amounts of oil, but we have to benefit the oil to use it, and that's the deal. So we sell some, and this colony thinking, it's pretty hard, because, well, during the 15th 17th century, we have this with sugarcane, we have this with gold. Then in the beginning of the 19th century, in the beginning of the 20th century, we have it with iron. And now we have it with soy, the soy plantation here. Well, if you check, as I said before, we have an area equals to German just for soy. And then you start to ask, okay, but where it's going? Brazil eat that much soy? No, we don't. It just export to China. And this is the deal, because we spend a lot of water, we spend a lot of terrain planting soil, and it's like 7 families that get much of the money. And you start to think, okay, why don't we go to small agriculture? You know, China do this. Why can't we? And well, this is the big deal. This is exactly the same answer about the iron. Why can't we just develop an industry here and don't sell the iron? Sell the iron products. And this is the colonial thinking. We we are independent for a long time, but we still think small, and it takes money, it takes goodwill, and unfortunately, this is kind of, when you start to study about it and you start to think about it, you see how great Brazil could already be. You know, imagine if during the 60s we just do we just did this big complex industry there in the north, how developed it would be now. Well, we are walking, but just small steps at a time.
No,
I
we're
hope
going
one
back.
day.
Now we're stepping back.
Yeah, unfortunately, I agree with you.
Huge steps,
Yeah,
large steps.
yeah.
Okay, so we have Grace from Indonesia, and she says it's a great presentation, and she would like to know, what are Brazil's efforts so far in consolidating control over its vast peripheral territory and connecting these regions more efficiently? And we know that linking the coast and the inland as well as integrating various geographical regions in Brazil will be technically
Sorry,
difficult, and it
Luciana.
requires high level of investment. So
Sorry, Luciana. It just I didn't get the whole question.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So she's asking about consolidating the control over the territory, Brazil's territory and peripheral territory, connecting the regions and linking the coast and the inland, how technically difficult it is, and it requires high levels of investment, and how is Brazil in that?
Okay. So first of all, the coast. The coast, let's say it's the hard part because it's more than 7,000 kilometers. And of course, now we are dealing with a different world. You know, we don't have like big wars for occupation, but if you check this part of Brazil here in the north, this is one of the last parts that was in a war against Bolivia that just get this. It calls Acre. And all along here in the north, we don't have a big policy in the frontier. This boundary here is actually, if you go around here in Suriname, we have even some small civil wars, but the Brazilian population, most of it is around the southeast. And we have almost anyone living here. And this boundary is actually pretty fragile, if you check. But around there, when you go here in the central to the south, here we have a more rigid policy and a lot of army bases and stuff like this. But actually, we can go to war. Please God, don't have a war for territory here in Brazil because we can't go. Please don't. And actually, it's more a gentleman agreement. You know, it's okay, we all live in peace because we don't have a big policy in the boundaries. It's all third world, if you check. We are not richer, much richer than Argentina, Paraguay, or Bolivia. Of course, the Brazilian GDP is much higher, but Brazilian is much bigger. You have to see the GDP per inhabitant. And so it's not much higher than the other countries. And here in the coast, we have in Trindade, it's 1.2 thousand kilometers from the coast. We have an army base here. And here in the north, this is the St. Peter, St. Paul archipelago. We already have another army base here. These are the far that Brazil goes. It's 1,200 kilometers here, and St. Peter, St. Paul, if I remember, is around 1.5 thousand kilometers. So this is the far. But actually, we don't have like a hard security. Most of this is our like gentleman's agreement. And of course, if you go to Uruguay, if you go to Argentina, you have to go to like to the immigration border. Then you have to declare everything that you are bringing and so on. But we don't have anything that is too hard. We are not with the intention to build a wall or something like this. I think we will not need this. And well, I think all of the South America is pretty united actually.
Excellent. Well, we're towards the end, but there's still one question.
Okay.
There, I mean, there are others, but let's approach this last one because we have like very short time. But I thought it was interesting. about the extraction industry and deforestation, and how does this affect the indigenous people?
What?
Uh,
Oh, the
how,
indigenous.
yes, the indigenous people, extraction industry and deforestation, and how does it affect the indigenous people?
Yeah, this is a problem mainly nowadays, and
Yeah.
it's not for ore extraction. Just to be clear, it's not for ore extraction, it's for cattle raising and agriculture. And well, we have in Brazil just an institute that guard indigenous people. Of course, they are brutally decimated from the 15th century to now. They are brutally decimated. When Portuguese starts to go countryside Brazil looking for gold, this is one of the biggest indigenous decimation of the history because they want the gold, of course, and now want the area for plantation. And well, in the last 2 decades, FUNAI, it's a great institution that look for indigenous people, but well, it's breaking apart in the last 2 years, unfortunately. And well, it's not good. We have a lot of fires and a lot of destruction in the Amazon, and I actually really don't know what is happening there. I have no idea.
And then nowadays nobody's doing anything, right? I
Yeah,
mean, there's
but
there's
I'm
no
extremely
one
worried
watching over it.
about indigenous people there because the coronavirus, the COVID-19 is already there, and there is no hospitals there. So if they get it, they have to be lucky to don't die. And besides that, they are just breaking in the properties and decimating. So I really have no idea what's going on there. I really don't have an idea. I know it's not good. It's now the worst time in the last 3 to 4 decades. I know it's bad. I know it's really bad, but I don't know exactly what is happening. You in the news, you can see that some indigenous people are killed in one day or in another, but this is when a reporters saw it, and this is when it get to us. We don't know what is going on there. I I actually can't answer this because I really don't know. I know it's extremely
No
expensive.
one knows, right?
Yeah,
No one
yeah,
knows.
who knows? And it's pretty hard. It's sad actually, but well, in the other hand, now we are starting some institutions to protect indigenous people. So I I can check for the name if you have just 30 seconds. I'm trying to find here. Well, we have something they call the Amazonia contra Covid. This is a non-governmental institution, and it means Amazon against COVID-19. And this is a non-governmental institution that is actually doing the job that FUNAI used to do. FUNAI is still doing what they can do, but well, their budget get a lot of cuts in the last 2 years. So yeah, it's sad. Again, we are trying to do our part, but let's see
Yeah.
what happens in the next years.
Not very nice perspectives, right, Professor?
No, no. But
Okay. It's sad because we reached 10 o'clock and it's the end of our session. This has been such a great session, and thank you very much for that,
well,
Professor.
I
We've
appreciate
enjoyed
it.
so much. There was so much interaction in the chat box, and I'm sure everybody learned so much. I mean, I myself, as you know, Brazilian, I learned so much, so I cannot even imagine how much the foreigners and the international students have learned with your presentation. And thank you so much for that. And we're honored to have you in such great project as the Summer School in Brazilian Studies. Thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And okay, goodbye, everyone. Hope not far away you can come to Brazil.
Yes, that's what we all hope, and
Yeah.
we're so sad no one can, you know, be here and get
Yeah.
together and go to the places as we have done previously, right, in the past editions. But
Yeah.
this will happen. Let's all open the cameras and let's see each other. Let's see all the faces and the, you know, oh, it's such a nice time. And thank you so much, guys, for being here once again. And we have weekend now, and we might have the time to watch the movie. It's very important that you watch the movie. As I said, the movie Que Horas Ela Volta. That's the movie, Professor. We have asked them to watch. We're going to have a film discussion session next week. So we have the weekend to watch that. And this movie tells a lot about Brazil and tells a lot about our, you know, culture and society. So we'll have the time to discuss that further next week. But it would be nice if you could all watch the movie. So don't forget that. And have a nice weekend. Take care of yourselves. Be safe. Stay home. Wash your hands. Use alcohol. And we'll see each other on Monday, right? At 8. And if you do have any questions, you can forward them to Professor Tiago. We're going to send him his email if he allows us to. And
Yeah,
also in the WhatsApp group, you can also join us there and ask questions if you have any. Okay? Thank you so much, guys. See
thank
you
you,
as you
everyone.
can.